on the Heart Bandits Network. Now, here's today's pitch.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Pitch Me. We're your host, Meg Ted. We certainly appreciate you guys being here today. Now, this is our last episode for the season, and even though it's been a short season for us, it's been very fulfilling. There have been a lot of teachable moments, a lot of touch and go moments, I think, to say the least. But overall, we could not have done it without you guys, and we appreciate everyone who's been here to make our first season very memorable.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, we do have some interesting and potentially big news for you guys. Megan and I had the chance to perform a version of this show at the Las Vegas House of Blues next year. Okay. Right. And our end goal with that is to try to bring this show to the Las Vegas Strip on a permanent basis. So we're trying to get that message spread. We'll have more on this next year. I'm not going to take up any more time with that right now. So now that you know some of our hopes and dreams, what are yours? Email us at pitchmethepodcast@gmail.com, and let's see what we can do together. All right, I seem to have found my groove, and it feels like I am ready to put this show into motion. So with that being said, let's get it going. This episode is titled Country Roads. Now, today's guest is someone who has grown very near and dear to my heart. Normally, she hosts this show along with me, but today Megan is going to cop a squat in the guest chair.
Oh, this is much nicer.
Stop that squat. She's going to tell us some of her story, and hopefully this is going to answer some of the questions on how and why we started this podcast to begin with. Okay? Now, in trying to figure out the introduction for Megan, I had to try to come up with something unique.
Make sure you remember that I'm coming back next time, Ted. So,
well, we'll see, won't we? After this. I thought, what's the one word that I could come up with that would describe Megan, encompass everything that she stands for? And there's only one word that came to my mind: belief. Well, what kind of belief are we talking about exactly? Well, how about her belief that she was going to survive while she's running for her life from a crazy man with an assault weapon? The kind of belief she had in herself when she quit a corporate position to launch her own brand. The kind of belief she has in me every Monday when she mics up and hosts this show with me. And then there's the belief that I have in her. I know that no matter how many times I trip, stumble, and fall along the way, she's there to pick me up and drag me to and across the finish line. I never doubt that for a minute. So how do you tell someone with these inspiring qualities how much you love and appreciate their unyielding and relentless commitment and belief in you? Well, hopefully I just did. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show the master of the mic, the baron of the booth, the woman of the hour too sweet to be sour, Mrs. Megan O'Donnell.
you nailed it, Ted. I'm definitely coming back next week. Oh my gosh.
I knew what I was going to do at the end, and I was trying to keep a straight face because I got that last bit from a Frasier episode. I have to full disclosure that. It's from a great line in Frasier, and I was a big fan of the show, and I thought, I would love to be able to use that sometime. When I first saw that, I never dreamed that I would get to use it.
I love it. And I am really good with microphones, obviously. So
I think you're well known in certain podcast circles as Microphone Meg. So that's what we refer to you. Hey, speaking of this being our first season, let's kind of toy around with that for a minute. What's been some of your favorite moments of this? I know what some of mine are, but what are some of yours?
Oh my gosh. You know me. I am a sucker for people's stories. I love hearing what makes people tick. I love hearing that I am not the only kind of crazy person who beats to their own drummer a little bit. So I have just loved meeting people who do their own thing and have faith that it's going to work out and know exactly what they want to do and why they want to do it and why they're sort of forging the path that they are. And we have had some cool freaking people on this show. I know by the time that this one airs, we'll have talked to what was probably the coolest person ever that we talked to, which was DC Glenn. Wow. And I literally loved it. It was the coolest moment of my life so far, I think.
Yeah, he was a blast. But you know what? I think my favorite episode, barring this one, because I really have been looking forward to this one for quite a while, And when we first started talking about doing this, I didn't know you as well, obviously, as I do now. So that makes it even nicer. And I'm so glad that we can finish with you.
I love it.
I think, is Alex. And I owe that to you because, I was going to have a substitute for Alex, but that was our first one.
Alex was our first Facebook Live ever, guys. Like before we even were on any podcast network, he was our first Facebook Live, and he was very gracious in allowing us to be, to be our guinea pig. And he actually is going to be the first guest on the season 2 of the podcast. So if you missed the Facebook Live, you have got to check him out coming early 2022, because like Ted said, he is just an incredible human with an incredible story and an incredible family and an incredible sort of journey that we got to go on with him. So very cool stuff.
What I liked about the episode is I think with anybody else, it would have been a disaster.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's really when it solidified that we were the right partners for each other. You were on and off. I don't even know if we ever had any audio that worked, but you didn't quit. I mean, you just kept on at it, Meg. You just kept on and on. You were popping on and off the screen. I was trying to interview Alex, but you never gave up, and neither did I. And that's when I thought, you know what, we really have something very special.
That also might be where I got my nickname. I don't want to say anything, but that might be where Microphone Meg came from. Guys, it just took me a little while to figure it out, but I figured it out, okay? That's the important part.
What's something unexpected? What's the most unexpected thing, aside from the no audio thing? What maybe just this whole venture that we've been through? What's been the most unexpected experience?
Gosh, there has been a lot of unexpected experiences. I think the biggest one was honestly like how successful we've been. And maybe that sounds weird to like toot our own horn, but like toot, right? Because like, why not? If you're not going to toot it for yourself, nobody's going to do it. But like, we have had like so much interest, so many cool people reach out to us, so many cool connections we've made. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but Alex actually wrote the intro and outro music that we play. So like all of these really cool connections with these really cool people who we wouldn't know otherwise, like have become like members of this family. And like, I just think that is cool because I love human connection. And I think that's what makes the world go round. And we have done it. We're doing it. And it's just cool.
We're doing it for the last time this season anyway.
I know.
Well, let me segue to something real quick. Let's go with your blog, and go ahead and plug your blog, please, Megan.
Yes, my award-winning blog.
Precisely. Yes, you're award-winning. I believe Ted Koppel and Bryant Gumbel have all endorsed your blog.
Exactly. So my blog is called The Loved Life, TheLoved life.com. It is award-winning. It has won twice the best blog in Delaware as voted by its readers, which I think is super cool because that means they care enough to vote for it. So, and it is all about.
How long have you done that blog? How long have you done that blog?
That blog will be 5 years old in January. I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was reading something, and I'm trying to remember when that was. Was it after we had started the podcast or maybe a little bit before? But I think it was on your blog. It was something about you're quick to offer other people grace, but not so quick to offer it to yourself.
Yeah.
And when I read that, I'm so glad I didn't do this interview with you then, because I don't think I knew you as well as I do now. Expand on that, because the way that I know you now, that just seems, I don't want to say self-loathing, because you don't strike me as that type of person, but why are you not quick to offer yourself the same kind of forgiveness and grace as you are other people?
Yeah, I think I have learned throughout my journey that we're just our own biggest critics, right? Like, and I certainly am my own biggest critic. So things that I would never even bat an eyelash for someone else doing, like, and give like forgiveness and grace and all of that stuff. To me, I'm very hard on myself. And I think that's a good and a bad thing. So let me preface it by saying that I'm okay with challenging myself. I want to push myself to do better. We have to be sort of our own best motivator, I think, in life. But there is an aspect of that where, right, you can sort of push yourself harder than is necessary and expect more, I think, from yourself than other people expect for you. And sometimes that can be a good and a bad thing. But I think in a lot of cases, it causes you to sort of lose faith and lose steam and lose hope and be like, oh, I can't do this. I thought I could do this. I should be able to do this. I'm not doing it. I'm failing. So it's really a mindset shift, I think, to figuring out how to turn the things that don't go exactly the right way into victories. And you and I have talked ad nauseum, I think, about plan Bs and how how that's kind of is just the story of my life, right? My life is a plan B. I think it's actually probably like plan R or X at this point. But I think it's all about sort of learning to embrace that. And it's a process. I mean, it's a process for me. I will point blank tell you that I still work on giving myself grace and giving myself forgiveness and not expecting perfection. But it's all sort of part of the process of figuring out where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be doing.
You've heard me speak about that inner voice that I've struggled with myself.
Yeah.
Did you ever go through that where the anger voice, I guess, was more dominant in your head than the forgiving one? Or
absolutely. And I think, again, for me, right, that inner voice had a monumental shift change 5 years ago. So it wasn't always, I mean, I think for a very long time, that failure voice that's like, you're not good enough, you're not doing this, you're not succeeding in the way that you think you should be succeeding, even though I had like a very successful job and my kids are great, my family's great, my husband's great, like everything is good. Always, I think, in the back of my mind was that voice that was like, this isn't right, you're not doing the right thing. And I think part of that shift change, like I said, was sort of going into the blogging world and the wellness world and all of that stuff with the mindset that like, it's new. Like when I started this, it was brand new to me. I had never done anything like this before. So sort of silencing that voice that had expected perfection from the job I had done for so long and was very good at, right? To learning to grow in a role that I had never done before was hard. I mean, it's hard. There's no way around that. It was hard. And it definitely took some adjusting to sort of realize that I think learning experiences in this world meant more because it still put me on the path to doing what I wanted to do.
Let's go ahead and address that 5 year ago episode. October the 1st, 2017. What changed that day for you, Megan?
Everything. I say that to everyone, and I cannot stress it enough in a way that I think makes sense to people. I think I say that, and sometimes people are like, okay, but truly everything. I am an East Coast girl, you know that, born and raised here in Delaware, but I love to travel, and I happened to be in Las Vegas for the Route 91 Harvest Festival, and I happened to be there on Sunday, October 1st, when someone decided that they wanted to open fire on everyone that was there. And I happened to be there as people were dying and running and doing the same thing with them. I was right alongside, kind of running for my own life. And when I say truly that, like, it changes everything when you survive something that you are convinced you're not going to survive, it changes everything. Like there's a perspective shift, there's a gratitude shift, there's a mindset shift, there's everything, literally everything. And I know that sounds cliche, but nothing about me is the same as it was, 5.5 years ago as it is today, all in a much better way, I think, I hope at least. So
well, this is how Megan and I have a connection. Even though we've never met, we're 3,000 miles apart. This story is part of our connection right here.
It's a good one.
The man who shot at Megan, his name is Stephen Paddock. He's from Mesquite, Nevada. Now, unless you're from Nevada, probably don't know anything about Mesquite. It's about 70 miles northeast of Las Vegas. It's where I had a rollover with my girlfriend at the time, her nephew, and about 3 or 4 of his kids, or his friends, I should say. We're doing 360s down the freeway, and I just have to let go of the wheel, and we spin around, and we just end up upside down in the middle of the freeway in the desert landscaping. That's Megan and I. That's our connection. Neither one of us should be here. but we are. I saw Megan's story in the USA Today, and I was going to pitch her because I thought her survival of the Las Vegas shooting would be something that would be television worthy. Turns out I couldn't get it pitched right, for whatever reason, I couldn't get the show made. And so I reached out back to her. Well, she actually kept in contact with me. This is how I knew I had the right person. Because every Monday, and ironically, every Monday now is when we do this podcast. But every Monday she reached out to me and said, hey, what can we do? What do we have to do to make this happen? And I just eventually said, hey, why don't we do a podcast and see what happens? Well, this is what happens when you just keep at it. When you get the right people that keep after you to keep at it. And that's why I used the intro that I did. Her belief and commitment to me, it's been unyielding. She has not let up and won't let up. And that's when you know you have found the right person. Now, Megan, how has your parenting changed after that? That's one question that I've always wanted to hear before and after the shooting. Is it more rigid and strict, or are you more carefree?
It's ironic because I think overall, I think a lot of people expected me to be much more reserved and much more nervous and much more, keeping everyone and everything in my life close to the vest. And that's just been the complete opposite. And I think, again, it comes back to the mindset, right? So I lived through an experience where I knew that that could be my absolute last moment on earth. I could have died point blank. We just put it out there. It is what it is. I could have easily died and easily been left 2,000 miles across the country for my husband and my kids and my parents dead in a field. That's just the reality of it. And I can talk about that right now. But when you face that, right, and you come through it and you have this incredible opportunity to live, you damn well better do it, right? You just better embrace every second that you are given and do the things and take the chances on the podcast that no one ever thought would be anything, and take the chances on telling your life story to a stranger in hopes that there'll be a show, and take the chances on doing all of the stuff, because I am very much of the mind that if today was my absolute last day on earth, am I happy with how I lived it? Am I okay with, if I don't wake up tomorrow, am I okay with how I approached today? Even if I was working or I was, doing chores or whatever, am I okay with the way that I lived? And that's how I try to live my life every day. So I would say I am very much a free spirit parent. My kids are good kids, so that probably helps it a little bit. But they kind of live with the same mentality. They just want to do all the things and go all the places and try all the stuff that they wouldn't normally try, because that's what I do. I think I lead a little bit by example, good or bad, but I hope it's a good one.
How did your family respond whenever you got home initially?
Yeah, so you have to remember, this was 10 o'clock at night in Las Vegas.
Was that your first trip to Vegas?
It was not. It was not. I had, yeah.
Okay.
That was probably my third or fourth, actually. Right. But it was 10 o'clock there, so it was 2 a.m. here. It was very middle of the night. Nobody was up. Nobody was watching TV. Nobody was seeing breaking news. So I called them. Called my mom. I called my husband, who didn't answer. I'll never forget him. Just kidding. And I called my dad, and my parents were my mom was what are you talking? I said, Mom, I'm okay. And she goes, what are you talking about? And I go, something is happening. I didn't even know really at the time what was going on. I mean, we were still at that point sort of running for our lives. We had ended up in an airport hangar. We had actually ended up running down a runway, a private runway at McCarran International Airport. So I just called and I said, I'm okay. I'm here. I was I think in a state of shock, obviously. And she was I don't know what you're talking about. And she's turned on the TV, and probably for 10 minutes, there was nothing. She was I still don't know what you're talking about. And then all of a sudden, they kept calling back, and they were oh my God, telling me all these things that were happening on the news. And I'm yeah, I get it. And they would keep saying it sounds like this happened, sounds like this happened. And I just vividly remember once we finally got shuttled to the main airport hangar, was the first time that we had seen the news. And it was probably 2 or 3 hours later. And someone turned on the TV. Mind you, it was 3 a.m., like there at this point, and nobody was in the airport. It wasn't really open.
Right.
Someone turned on a TV to a news channel, and it was like 2 dead in Las Vegas shooting. We were like, okay, well, that's terrible, but like, gosh, how much worse could it have been? And then all of a sudden it was like 15 dead, and then it was like 20 dead. And we just sat there and we watched this death and injury toll go up higher. And it's one of those like moments that's sort of like burned into my brain. Like you don't forget, right? Watching this death toll just rise and rise and rise of people that were all around you. Like there was, people around me that did not survive. And that's not always easy to come to terms with. But again, that's why I try to live my life in a way that does justice to the fact that I was given this sort of incredible opportunity to have a second chance and sort of live the life that so many people didn't get to do.
A major second chance.
Yeah.
Did you have any friends or family that made that journey, that trip with you to Las Vegas?
I did. I was actually with 3 friends, and it's funny because, we talk so much about like, I am a big believer in like signs and manifestation and all of that stuff. My girlfriend and I were supposed to go together, and it was just the 2 of us. And then she got pregnant, and I just think like, and she wasn't super far along, and she so could have gone, but I just think like, in my brain, like these are the things that go through your head. Like, what if something had happened? Like, what if it had turned out differently if she had been there? So it was just me and 3 friends. Everybody made it safe. We were all sort of like split up when all of this was happening. So it did take us a while to get in touch with one of our friends that was not with us. And again, that's another moment, right? That's burned into my brain. It took hours, and turns out he was asleep. So that was a good thing. But in the time, right, we didn't know. So we're calling and calling and calling and texting and texting and texting. And I'm like, please answer me. Like, so again, it's one of those moments where it burned into my brain when he finally at 5 a.m. responded and was like, oh my God, like I'm just turning on the TV. I'm just seeing what happened. And I go, I don't care. Like the relief, I think, was like another moment that you just don't forget. There's so many moments of that night like burned into my brain, good and bad. I know that sounds weird, but
I get that.
I think in those kind of instances, right, you see the worst of humanity, but you also see like the absolute best that people have to offer. And like there are those moments too when the world feels really dark and cold and scary and terrible, where I remember like just people helping people, complete strangers, that I try to hold on to when everything kind of seems like we're 100 miles apart. So
sure, right. Do you still keep in touch with anybody that was at that site that day? Do you have any colleagues or friends that you?
I do, yeah. There's a bunch of us. There's a bunch of support groups. So there's a few people we actually met the following year back here at a concert. Jason Aldean, we went back to kind of finish what we started, and met a couple local survivors that were there, and we have kept in touch. Yeah. So like I said, it's all about the human connection. And I think that something good for me has come from something so terrible. And I just, I am grateful for that. I am.
I think why your story resonated with me is my uncle got shot. God, I was just a kid. He would have been in his early 30s, and he ended up a quadriplegic for the rest of his life. And the quality of his life, it's been highly diminished. So I'm very thankful that you didn't sustain any injuries, but I knew where you were. I think I've heard, and I hate to say it, but you just become so callous. It's like, oh, there was just another shooting. Well, what else is new in America?
Absolutely.
Your story, it just stuck out to me because I was a limo driver in Vegas decades ago, but I drove that strip. I drove right past where you were shot at. Yeah. And I think it just popped out on the page when I read about your story, the traumatizing experience. I could just put myself there because I had been there. And I think that's why I could relate to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you got home, what was your mindset? Obviously, it had changed between the time you left and by the time you got back home. What were some of the major changes that you went through personally and professionally?
Yeah. So I think when I came back, you know me, I am a social butterfly. I love people. And
Well,
that has always been the way that I have been. But I came back and I sort of, I think just in processing what had happened and processing the trauma, I sort of cut myself off from everyone and everything. For the first 2 days, it was like I think I was riding an adrenaline high. Like we were on every TV show because we were the only people from around here. So we were like, I think to the press, we were like, oh my God, this magical unicorn. Like, how
right,
lucky are we that these people
right,
were there
right.
from our area? But to us, it was just like, this is so overwhelming. Like, there was reporters at the airport. When I got off the plane, I was like, all I want to do is like see my husband and my kids and my parents, and like there's reporters in my face. And then there was reporters, and I am grateful that they shared my story. Truly, I am. But, I think in the moment you're just flying so high on adrenaline. Like we were on TV shows and all of the stuff. And it was like, oh, okay, like, wow. And then once that stops, I think you're left with like the reality, right, of the
Right.
situation, which is like, holy crap, like I just survived this. Like, what do I do? What do I do with all of this that I have just lived through? So I went radio silent for weeks from social media, from friends, from, most people. I think I went through the motions of living, but I wasn't really doing that. And I think that I was just trying to process. And in doing that, I think what I realized was that I had two choices, right? So I could let this define me in a way that leads me down this path of like, kind of being a recluse and sort of holding myself off from society and not doing all of the things that I love to do, like live music and traveling and all of that stuff. Or I could earn this second chance that I had been given and live for these people that weren't allowed to live and stop doing all of the things that weren't important anymore. And I think in that moment, I decided that like I'm just not meant to be a recluse. I love people too much. So instead, I chose to stop doing all the things that weren't important anymore. And for me, what that meant was quitting my very nice desk job and quitting everything that was sort of routine to me and known to me and easy for me. And quite frankly, made my life very easy. I made a very good living. And doing the opposite, which was moving from corporate America to doing my own thing and kind of creating my own space where I wanted people to know that there was good in the world. And I wanted people to feel like they had a place where they could talk about whatever was going on and whatever was happening in their lives and feel better about it. And I wanted a place where people prioritize their own physical, mental, and emotional health. Because quite frankly, at that moment, like my thought was, happy people don't kill people. They just don't. When you give people the opportunity to express themselves and to be comfortable with what's going on, whether it's good or bad, like those kind of people just they don't kill people. And that was honest to God my first thought. Like if I create this great space, then like maybe I can help one less person go through what I've gone through. And it's kind of just morphed and grown. So I became a mindfulness coach and a personal trainer, and just wanted to create happy people who felt good about themselves and good about their lives and good about everything that was going on. And we created the Loved Life, which is all about wellness of the mind, body, and soul. And gratitude is probably the number one focus of what we do there, because I think every good thing in life comes back to that.
Well, Megan is being a tad bit humble because she was in operations at one of the biggest conglomerates you've ever heard of. I won't mention the name, that's up to her, but she had a very prestigious position. Now, that being said, what kind of support did you have when you told your husband and kids and friends and families that you were going to leave that corporate world and start out on your own. What was their
Yeah.
response?
I think my kids thought I was crazy. They still kind of do, just for the record.
For different reasons.
Right. My husband is probably one of the most incredible humans that you've ever met. And he was just like, do what you got to do. We'll figure it out. I'll support you. And, my parents are the same way. I surround myself, I think, with people who think that way, who are like, you have to do what you have to do to be happy. And if that means stepping about 20 miles outside of your comfort zone, then that's what you got to do. And we're going to support you. And they have been my biggest cheerleaders ever since. My kids are too, but again, still a little suspect of me, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, they're great. And they believe, I think, in what I'm saying and what I'm doing. And I think beyond that, they have lived through the change in me, and lived through, seeing who I was in the before versus who I am in the after. And they see that what I'm doing works. They see it firsthand because I live it. So I think that makes it a little easier to support me when they know that what I'm saying and what I'm doing and what I truly believe in works.
Well, that's what I was going to kind of ask is, after this whole incident with the Mandalay Bay and the Las Vegas shooting, are they clingier? Your kids, your husband, your mom, are they more clingy now than they were prior, or how is that dynamic changed?
It's funny because I say that all the time. I say, like, I'm 37 years old, and my parents now still ask for my flight itinerary and where I'm staying when I travel. So I think there are things that have changed, right? There are things that have just fundamentally changed in the way that we operate. I will tell you, a fundamental change in me is that I still do all of these things that I love to do, like go to music and do all these things, but I am aware of every exit in every building that I go into. So there's fundamental things that change for sure. It's the reality of life, right? But I don't let those kind of changes stop me from living the way that I want to live. So I think there's definitely a protective element. My husband has forever told anybody that if I hadn't been able to fly out that Monday morning, because there was a chance, right? They weren't letting flights go.
They shut it down.
Yeah, for a little bit. And so he was of the mindset, ready to hop in the car. He was on the freeway, I think, driving across the country to get to me. So I think there's just, there's things that change. Maybe not good or bad. They just change. They're just a different way of living, and you deal with them and you move on, and you don't let it stop you from doing what you're meant to do.
Have you ever been a mentor or a protege? Just out of curiosity, because I know you come from the corporate world, so I'm thinking you may have had some opportunities to be a mentor to someone. Have you ever done anything along those lines?
Yeah, so in my former life, again, I'm just a people person. That's what I love to do. I mentioned I was a people manager. I was a part of a program called Great People Managers. And that was what we got to do. We got to talk about what we did, how we did it, why what we do resonates with people. And I still kind of take a lot of that, even though I don't manage people in the corporate sense anymore. I get to help people manage their lives. And it's all really the same, right? It's in how you treat people. Everything you do comes down to how you treat people and how you connect with people. And that's why I go back to human connection, I think, is the most important thing alongside gratitude to make our lives fulfilled and make us feel like we're doing what we're meant to do.
I could have put it better myself. Well, then let's speak about the future with our podcast, and we'll just wrap this up for the season. What do you want out of the future for us with this podcast, Megan?
Everything, Ted. I want everything.
Everything. I love that.
End it now. Shut it down. I want all of it. That's it. There's no other answer. I just want to keep amplifying stories. I think that they're so important, again, to that connection element. Understanding why people are the way they are and what makes people tick and what has brought them to this moment is important, right? I meet people now that I didn't know then, and they're just you're so upbeat, you're so happy, everything you do is great. And I'm well, first of all, no. Right. I promise you I'm not happy all the time. Maybe 98% of the time. But they're your personality is so bubbly, you're so great. And I'm yeah. So I was thank you. I really tried, because I really, truly love life. And that is sort of the motto of my whole brand, is to live love and to love life. And I try to like live in a way that people know that I genuinely care and I genuinely want them to be successful. And I try to just love life. And that doesn't mean that everything that comes along is pleasant and full of joy. But what it means is it's the mindset shift to living what I like to call a gratitude first lifestyle, which is, even in the midst of all these big giant things that may feel like they're going wrong, you can always find a reason, no matter how small, to be grateful, and clinging to that and putting that at the forefront of what you're focusing on, even if the big things are not going well, changes everything and changes how you look at life and how you react to things, and literally changes everything. So that is what I focus on a lot, is living a gratitude first lifestyle. And I think that's what has brought us here. And I am just grateful to be able to do this and to connect with you and to connect with all of these people and to share stories, because I just think that's what makes the world go round. And I think that we can do awesome things if we keep doing it. We have like super cool guests already lined up for season 2, and I'm so excited.
You know what? Let's just wrap it up on that, because that was a great smile and a great ending with your voice. I don't think we can top that. Megan, why don't you take us out of here? We'll let you regain your hosting duties for a second.
Awesome. I'm back in the host chair, guys. And thank you so much for listening to my little story. Like I said, we love to tell your stories. And to do that, we have to have you reach out to us and tell them to us first. So you can find us on social media at Pitch Me The Podcast. That's Pitch Me, THE Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. You can also email us at pitchmethepodcast@gmail.com. Like I said, we have super cool people coming on season 2, and I would love for you to be one of them.